Hi, I'm Maggie MacAlpine, the Director of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Evangelism here at Seceon. And with me today is
Gary Wallin.
Yeah, Gary, do you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I've been in the IT space for about 25 years and currently have an organization that's a managed service provider and IT solution provider. And we have a cybersecurity practice, and we've been doing that for about 8 years. It's called the Bluwave Consulting Group.
Very nice. Yeah. So, obviously Bluewave is a very, beloved partner of ours here at Seceon. And this is part of our series on Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I'm really excited in particular for this talk because Gary is, very technical, very knowledgeable. And I'm just excited because we're going to dive into some actually more advanced technical concepts here. We're gonna leave a little bit the high level behind. So if you're more of a beginner, I think this, you might learn some new terms here, but I'm hoping this will be really valuable for practiced, people who've been in the field for a while. Gary, you and I were talking just before this about the Microsoft vulnerability, evilginx 3, and I was wondering if you could just give us an introduction to what's going on there.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously in the cybersecurity space, one of the things you hear is you need to use multi-factor authentication. And that's definitely true. However, you need to also understand that there's vulnerabilities associated with this multi-factor authentication. And it's not only associated with Microsoft, although Microsoft is a big one because a lot of people are using Office 365. And so what I was interested in talking about is this evil GNX, which if I can share my screen here, we'll just kind of walk through this. Basically, it's a man-in-the-middle spear phishing attack. And essentially what it does is the evil GNX tool uses a special link to capture credentials that then the attacker plays back to Office 365 and bypasses your multi-factor authentication. So how it works is that they set up a special link, which basically then and then sends you a phishing attack that you then go to the link, they capture your token, and then they play that to the Microsoft infrastructure and bypass your MFA. We started seeing this earlier this year with you can find some YouTube videos on people who say that they got hacked because they bypassed MFA and things like this. This is definitely something to pay attention to and to try and protect yourself against if at all possible.
Right. What I find particularly devastating is, if you go to any cybersecurity events, listen to any cybersecurity talks, you're going to hear MFA. We're raising the floor on security. Everybody should be doing it. And I want to caution and say, just because this vulnerability exists, that advice doesn't change. MFA still does make it harder for attackers to get in, but but that does make this attack particularly disturbing. So, I remember you also mentioning that Microsoft is sort of enabling this attack, albeit by accident. Perhaps.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there isn't an out-of-the-box way from Microsoft's solution. There isn't an out-of-the-box way to protect against this. What you need to do is you need to enable conditional access policies. And unfortunately, and here's a blog article associated with this, and we can provide the links for people and whatnot. But essentially, there's a conditional access policies cost about $8 per user per month from Microsoft. Now, there are other ways to deal with this. One of the things that I can think of that we use is that your email hygiene organizations such as Proofpoint, and I suppose I don't know if Mimecast does this or not, but I know Proofpoint for sure does this. Is they do URL rewriting, which basically means as somebody sends a phishing attack your way, they'll rewrite the URL to go to their sandbox first, right? And a sandbox is basically, I'm going to check out what happens in this environment first to see if it's bad. And if it is, I'm going to stop you from actually going to that. So you have that. But let's say it gets past all of that. There's nothing that you can do from a Microsoft perspective. And it's also important to note that it bypasses Windows Defender. It bypasses all the policies that Microsoft provides. If you pay for the conditional access, $8 per user per month, you can get around this. You can prevent this type of thing. But Microsoft doesn't have a good way other than if you start paying them more money. And I think that's wrong. Gary's personal opinion, I think that's totally wrong. When you have a situation where you've basically you've raised the drawbridge, but you've got a giant gaping hole in the back, on your east wall or whatever, you need to do something about that, not the people that are in your castle.
Yeah, and not for $8 a month. Like, it should just be assumed you're already in the castle. You shouldn't have to pay a surcharge on top of whatever else you're paying already to get a defense for such a devastating vulnerability.
Yeah.
Presumably you're already you should be covered already. So that's what I thought was also particularly devastating about this one. So we've covered it. So I guess just to sum up, how could do organizations just have to pay this amount, or is there you mentioned some of it, but like what else can you do?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things, right? So if you use an MFA solution that is not Microsoft's MFA, right? So if you run a Duo, you run an Okta, you run some of these other ones, that will help protect you against this type of thing because they're smarter about those things. And how that looks is basically when they get the token, they play it back to Microsoft, right? So let's give a particular scenario here. So we're in San Diego. So if I log into the environment, Office 365, it hands me a token. What evilginx does is evilginx takes that token and they play it back, but they're playing it back in a different area. What should happen, let's say, Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. Not to pick on the South or whatever, but so basically somebody plays it back from Georgia. What should happen is it should prompt for multi-factor authentication again, because, hey, this is a different location. That's what the conditional access policy does. If you don't have the conditional access policy, you play the token, it goes, hey, you're on your merry way, and you're right in, able to do whatever kind of havoc it is that you want to wreck, right? So if you have another a solution that handles multi-factor authentication, like Okta, like Duo, like some of the other ones that are out there, they do that sort of thing. Like, hey, you're coming from a different IP address, I'm going to prompt you for your multi-factor authentication again. That's how it should be. So that's one way. And then the other one is to protect against the spear phishing side, right? When the email comes in, is you have your email hygiene applications. First of all, that check for the spear phishing, and if you have a solution that has a sandbox, like I said, we use Proofpoint, which we think is great because it'll basically redirect the URL over into their sandbox. They'll run whatever it is that's going on, realize that it's bad news, and stop you from it, right? So you can protect it on the inbound, and then on the outbound with some type of multi-factor authentication. That's not Microsoft. Or you go ahead and fork over the $8 per user per month for the conditional access policies.
Why would they even, I assume so in so many cases when you have these vulnerabilities, I assume it's a convenience versus security thing. What is the benefit here for leading this, you would say? I don't know.
The benefit for
just why would you even lead, like, why aren't they prompting the way the others are? Which you just don't know.
Because there's more money to be made. This is Gary's. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
But my opinion is because there's more money to be made,
Yeah.
And somebody somewhere decided, oh, well, conditional access policies, we should charge more for this type of thing.
Yeah, right. But really, hopefully there'll be enough awareness, and that will change. That this is too critical to leave behind a paywall, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
hopefully.
so continuing on, we've talked now about specifically evilginx 3, and we've talked about MFA kind of in general, and the flaws that sometimes these big companies can leave behind. I guess, is there anything else you wanted to cover along the lines? Anything we might have missed?
Oh, well, I mean, when we were talking before, you
Mhm.
were saying, what are the things that concern me? And I will
Yeah,
tell you, AI duplication concerns me, right? So
right.
artificial voice, which basically defeats your voice verification. And then of really scary note is the situation that I chatted with you about, where in Hong Kong, and here I'll share my screen again. In
Yeah.
Hong Kong, they got away with $25 million um, uh, through a fake Zoom phone call, right? So this is what concerns me, because I don't know how we're going to deal with this. As soon as more and more attackers, right? So what happens is you get these pioneers that do these amazing things, and amazingly evil things, and reach the news, right? I mean, this is on CNN that this came out, because it's 25 million. That's a decent chunk of change, and people are highly motivated for this type of situation, right? But then you get somebody that makes a tool like what happened with evilginx, for
Mhm.
example. They make a tool, and then you get everybody and their uncle is now, empowered to go ahead and wreak havoc, right? And
Mhm.
so my concern is with how good AI voice duplication and AI video is. You can generate a likeness of someone and have it be AI, and have it be controlled by uh, by people, as like a puppet, right? So you can have like a puppet, which is I think what this situation was, and they can't tell the difference. So this finance worker sent 25 million because they participated in a video call where they felt that they had the CFO was there and multiple C-suite officers, and the whole thing was fake, and they wound up sending 25 million from this event, and this is what scares me, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know how you deal with this. One of the things that we've been discussing is that, okay, well, now you have to show up in person, right? Which in some cases that's not possible. That's going to hinder commerce, in some way, in some capacities,
Mhm.
and so that's scary.
Yeah.
That's something that we're going to need to wrestle with as cybersecurity professionals, and I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I think this speaks to sort of a larger, combined with Gen X3, this sort of speaks to a larger authentication problem. Authentication's been an issue in cybersecurity, since the beginning of, online, payment processing, and just the internet in general. Who are you who you say you are? It's one of the thorniest problems we have. And this, with the voice falsification and the image falsification, and just how quick and how, I think that's absolutely, it's going to the very heart of some of the tools we've been using to enable things, as you said, like international finance, international business. If half your company's overseas, you can't just say pop down to the bank and show us you are who you say you are.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and also you throw in things like, oh, sorry if my voice sounds at least a little broken up, maybe it's a bad connection, or if I look a little strange, it's a bad connection.
exactly.
I don't know what that worker could have done. If you've got multiple C-suites on the call, all telling you it's fine, what do you do? And then if you,
Right.
of course, wire laws are the money's gone. So
Right. So one thing that we have taken to do is this. So, and this kind of harkens back to the old days of dealing with mainframes, is that when you originally connected to mainframes through a modem, to show my age here, basically a phone that would dial up and talk to a computer. you would call into the number that was designated, and then in your profile, a number was put in there that then that central system would call you back, therefore identifying that basically this is the correct, make sure that it's the correct connection, so that somebody couldn't come in with your username and password or whatever and get access to the environment, just by knowing what your password was. And so you want to do something similar with that with financial transactions, where you contact a known number. Now, the issue with that is I mean, you got all kinds of things, right? So you got SIM swapping, you've got stuff like that, where basically there is a way to defeat that process, but that's something that will help you, is just always contact a known number. We do that with any financial transaction, is that whatever it is we've been dealing with somebody before, we go back in the past, right? Not something new, right? We go back in the past and we say, okay, well, we know that this person, you call the company and you ask to speak to that person. You have to break out of whatever path it is that they're pointing you down to verify, get out of that transaction, and verify from a separate path, from a separate known number and whatnot, that this is exactly what we're supposed to do. And that's the only way that I can think of to assist people in those types of situations, right? So, for example, let's say that our financial person, he's on this voice video call, whatever, and they're like, yeah, send it right now. Well, that's a great idea. I'll get right on that. And he picks up the phone and he calls whatever number it is that he knows is one of those the C-suite people, and says, hey, were you just on a video call with me? Did you tell me to wire 25 million Hong Kong, the equivalent of 25 million Hong Kong dollars to whatever it was that you told me to? No, I didn't do that. Okay, great. Thank you. Next.
Right, but then, I mean, this is all social engineering enablement. What if they had gone in and changed the number that you're supposed to call a few days before? That should get flagged. And, there's
sure.
But there are ways to raise the floor. There's ways to make this more, but we're kind of getting into kind of old school, just good old fashioned fraud, to some extent with this,
It's very true, right? Yeah. I mean, and I think that, basically when tech fails you, you go low tech, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that essentially, if you can't, like, look, the tech and everything we have is great, and we're going to have pass keys and this type of stuff, but sometimes when the tech fails you, when it's not an adequate solution, go low tech.
Right.
Call somebody back, straight. Just I have this piece of information. I'm going to use this piece of information to bypass whatever path it is that these yahoos want me to go down.
Yeah, tech is ultimately an enabler. The internet is an enabler meant to make information free.
The other one about that is be suspicious, right? One of the things that we've seen with our clients, which we just want to, right, wrong, or indifferent, smack them upside the head, is that they just assume that when they get these urgent messages and whatnot, is that this is something, because it's my CFO or my CEO or whatever, that I need to do this right away, right? Don't get stuck in that. And if you're a C-suite person, realize that it's in your best interest for these financial people to take a step back and to go, yeah, I'm not so sure I'm going to do that so fast, so maybe it'll slow other transactions down a little bit, but you'll really help avoid a lot of fraud.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend in the space. Her name's Rachel Toback, and she's like really well known for social engineering stuff. And she talks all the time about like how they'll hijack your brain with urgency.
Exactly.
It always needs to be done right now. And this is also very common in much more, close to the ground fraud, like people calling you up and saying, wire me this money or else your son's going to jail. Just things that they're always meant to be like really urgent, so that your brain kind of stops working, or like you're going to go to jail, or you've been late on your taxes and you're in trouble now. There's a lot of tactics around that. And again,
Absolutely.
social engineering is going to be enabled by AI, because now it really will sound like your son calling from prison. It will sound like your boss,
That's right.
chewing you out. And that's pretty frightening, because before, and also I think, just as a side thing, this is my own bugaboo, but like, it's one more reason I've always been against the sort of victim blaming that often happens in cybersecurity. How could you not know? Like, how could you, give that money away to this person? Well, there were 3 other C-suites on the call. They were all saying it was fine. Like,
Right.
you got to remember, these criminals are spending, the 40 hours a week you're spending at your job, they're spending figuring out how to, defraud you. And they're they're good at it. It's like
they're really, really good at it.
They're putting a lot of thought into this $25 million payday they're going to get.
The problem is that they're way better at separating you from your money than you are from keeping it.
Yeah, exactly. And they prey upon the social contract. I mean, there's a certain amount of just like, convenience. An example is if you're going to rob someone's house and you show up in a Comcast van or something, like, a utility van, and you walk in, you take their TV and you leave. And how could you have not stopped them? Well, they were showing up in a, apparently a legitimate way of doing this. They appeared to be the C-suite. It sounded like somebody I should trust. And society just functions on a certain amount of, like, we shouldn't have to verify every step of the way, every single thing that can happen. The attacker only has to be right once, and the defender has to be right all the time. So it's not about some people being stupid. It's about the fact these tools and these attackers are sophisticated. They're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're having more and more sophisticated tools, and that frightens us defenders.
Yeah, and the issue in my mind is that, the generative AI is getting way smarter, and people are highly motivated to, it's easy to use these tools, and they're highly motivated to do something that let's say this thing plans out a sophisticated attack. They're highly motivated to execute it, so they're going to find a way to execute it. I mean, 25 million, who wouldn't, if you that was what was at stake, and you had a nefarious intentions, that's a gold mine right there. So
I've seen people do just as much for 10,000. So yeah, 25 million is absolutely motivating.
Exactly. So
there's a great Penn and Teller. They do a lot of anti-fraud stuff, and I just kind of
love Penn and Teller.
They had a great quote. They said, never assume that the attacker, I'm paraphrasing wildly here, but never assume the attacker won't do more than you would do for that amount of money.
Yeah,
to gain exactly. That amount of money.
That totally sounds like Penn.
Yeah,
something like that, right?
Fantastic quote.
I can hear his words coming out of your mouth, right? Just like that.
Exactly. But yeah, it's just I think I wanted to just kind of close this out on just, there are these next generation threats, and we're trying to keep an eye on them, and people have to be vigilant, but we've also, we've just got to be aware that these tools are out there, and that people, it can't possibly, we got to be right all the time,
Yeah, the worst case scenario is when you don't know what you don't know, right? So our job, I think, as practitioners, right, is to increase that education, so at least people are aware, then they can do something about it. If you don't know what you don't know, you're a sitting duck. So
yeah, no. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Gary. I absolutely loved this conversation. Obviously, I let it go a little longer than our usual, just because like I could talk about this sort of thing all day. So
yeah, sure.
Is there any sort of plug you want to do before we close? Any event or something like that? Just check out Bluwave. If you're especially if you're in the area.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're the things that we do. We want to focus on the client and help the client with whatever it is that they're dealing with, whether it's cybersecurity or infrastructure or whatever. And it's really important for us to focus on the requirements of whatever it is that's happening. And so that's why, if you're looking for something, you feel free to reach out to us and contact us. We can help you out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thanks.